Hey, it's November. You know what that means? December. And you know what that means? January. That's right, winter driving season is upon us. Stay tuned. Hello there, Sully here, the retired tanker yanker. Welcome to my YouTube channel, Transitions. Remember, please subscribe to my channel, and if you already are subscribed, thank you for your support. For the rest of you out there, why aren't you subscribed? I'm trying to grow this channel, and I can't do that if you don't subscribe. You know, Social Security disability really doesn't pay all that great, and I need your help to make this channel great. I do work hard at these videos, or at least as hard as I can, and I do get feedback from a few people, but it usually isn't necessarily the direction I want to go. But I may have to make changes in that department, and to do that I need your feedback, your support, and your subscription. First, some shout outs. I want to give a shout out, first of all, to my younger sister. I avoid calling her my little sister, even though sometimes I do, because she always will be my little sister. But shout out Maggie. If you're a fan of Jane Austen, you probably know her as Margaret C. Sullivan, the author of the Jane Austen Handbook and Jane Austen Cover to Cover. And she also has an online blog, not a YouTube channel, but an old-fashioned internet blog, and it's called austinblog.com. And go there, check out some of her fan fiction. I think you'll like it. A big shout out to Ralph at Ralph's Trucking. He's given me a lot of help and support, and I've gained more than a few subscribers from his live streams. Ralph, I know you're going through some rough times today. It seems that he has a troll that is zeroed in on him, and I find that practice appalling. You know, because trolls are miserable people with miserable lives, and they want to share their misery. I've said in the past that it is kind of hard to offend me, and I deal with trolls by thanking them for their input, and that confuses the living shit out of them. So hang in there, Ralph. Trust me, I know what tough times are about because I'm going through some tough times myself right now. So if you ever want to talk, I'm here for you, brother. You can email me. My address is in the channel description. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help you. I want to give a big shout out to Daniel McCarthy, fellow tanker yanker and fellow Irishman. He posted a video about winter wrecks, and that's something he no longer has to deal with since he's staying closer to his home in Florida. Yo, Dan, that was a great video, and I'm going to leave a link to it on my end screen. And thank you for your kind permission to do so. I want to link to it because it is relevant to what I was going to talk about today. And finally, I want to give a big shout out to John at JBG Travels. John has a great channel, and he's been doing it for some time. He has one of the best trucking YouTube channels out there, and he has given me lots of help and lots of support. So thanks, John, for the shout-outs. Thanks for posting my videos on your Facebook page, and I really do appreciate it. So the next time you find yourself rolling down I-95, going through Northeast Philly, maybe you can stop somewhere and we'll have a cup of coffee or a bite of lunch. And if you have the time, maybe I can show you the city. You know, Mark Twain once said, everyone talks about the weather, but no one does anything about it. So true, so true. You know, we even have an entire cable TV channel dedicated to the weather, and I'm sure that's due to the fact that people want to know what the weather is doing. Now, personally, I do that by looking out the window, but I guess some people can't fathom that idea. We criticize the TV weatherman, say that all they're doing is guessing, but these people are educated, trained meteorologists. They have formal training in weather forecasting, so I'm pretty sure they're not guessing. And it's a good idea to know what Mother Nature has in store for you when you drive a big truck for a living. I'm also going to leave a link to a video I did earlier. This was from back in the day when I was starting out. I was still trying to do them on my phone. I didn't have editing software. So it's going to look kind of rough, but I'm telling the story about how I drove home on Super Bowl Sunday from Toronto to Philadelphia in some less than ideal weather. I literally drove through 5 bands of lake effect snow, and I was running empty. Traffic wasn't so bad because it was a Sunday morning, but the whole trip took me a little over 13 hours. And that was to complete a trip which normally I finished in 10 and a half hours. Now, traffic wasn't bad even with the weather, but the weather was definitely against me. So be sure to watch this video to the end to check out those links to those videos. You know, I started trucking in 1993. I did most of my school in the spring and my student driver training in the summer. And I finally got into the first seat probably sometime in early October and commenced my driving career heading into the winter of '94. Remember that winter? I think we had something like 20 winter storms, plenty of cold, plenty of snow, and plenty of ice. Now, of all these conditions, ice is definitely the worst. Cold can be your enemy, and snow is a pain in the gluteus maximus, but ice is absolutely the worst. I mean, even the thinnest of glazing can cause you to lose traction. Snow, regardless of how much you get, can be equally dangerous. Some of the most hairy conditions I've driven in were when there was less than an inch, and that's 2.5 centimeters for you people who don't live in the United States, and the temperature was below freezing. Back when I was hauling mail and I was on the Cincinnati run, I used to drive out to Somerset, PA to swap with another driver. And it was always late at night, early in the morning. They would start salting the road with the first flake. I mean, those trucks, those salt trucks, salt shakers, there we go, driver, those salt shakers, they were out there between Blue Mountain and probably a little even further out than I used to swap at Somerset. And those snow trucks would be out there, those salt trucks rather, would be out there with the first snowflake. And they would salt every night. I mean, you had to be careful because driving the PA Turnpike, anybody who's driven the PA Turnpike from Blue Mountain West knows that the hills are kind of hilly, the curves are tight, and it just gets crazy out there. And in the winter of '94, I was just starting out, as I said, and I learned how to drive in winter conditions in a hurry. And experience is always the best teacher. But you need to respect what's going on. If you watch Netflix, like I do, there's a television show in there. It's called Heavy Rescue 401, and it's about tow truck and recovery drivers who operate in southern Ontario. Now, if you've ever been up on the 401, you know what it can be like in winter up there. I've driven the 401 in various times of the year and in all kinds of weather conditions. And I'll tell you what, when you see some of that winter driving there, that program doesn't exaggerate. They get some nasty snows in southern Ontario. And when you get nasty winter weather combined with the busiest highway in North America, there could be some trouble out there. Drivers, remember, you're a professional. The four-wheelers are the amateurs. They're not trained to react to changing weather conditions like you are. Trouble is, there's more than a few cowboys out there in our job. And to them, dangerous weather is just another part of the job. Well, like in my previous video about fatigue, economic pressures often force drivers to drive in poor weather when they should shut down. Common sense gets overruled by circumstance. Pressure from an unsympathetic dispatcher also plays into the equation, but for the most part, your dispatcher, no dispatcher, will, or shouldn't anyway, ask you to drive if you're not comfortable with the conditions, because safety is the rule one in this business. So how do you deal with winter weather? Well, if you even think for a minute that it might be unsafe, well, that's enough for the law. You have the final say, driver. Nothing you haul is worth your life or anyone else's life either, for that matter. But if you must drive, use the tools at your disposal. You have your mind, you have your hands, and you have your training. And that training likely involved a safe driving class such as the Smith system. Now, I first encountered the Smith system when I was in high school driver's ed, and every company I worked for, I had to take it. So, here are the 5 rules of the Smith system. The 5 rules for safe driving under the Smith system are: number 1, get the big picture. Number 2, aim high in steering. Number 3, keep your eyes moving. Number 4, leave yourself an out. Number 5, make sure they see you. So let's talk about how these rules can be very helpful to you, especially in winter driving. Okay, let's take these point by point. Point 1, get the big picture. Make sure you are aware of everything going on around you. In heavy winter weather, visibility is limited. Remember that. You need to adjust your driving to adapt to this situation. Slow down, leave room, don't drive alongside anyone else. And be aware of other motorists, especially the four-wheelers who are driving slowly. Again, I'm going to remind you that you are the professional, which means on your worst day, you are better than them on their best day. Professionalism is expected from you, especially in inclement weather. Point 2, aim high in steering. Normally that means keeping your aim at a point about as far down as the highway as you can see. But in inclement weather, you can't see as far. So what you need to do is anticipate where that point would be. It's instinctual to any professional driver. If you're new, it's an instinct you should develop, and you must develop it. So steer as if it is a clear, dry day with ideal conditions. In other words, do nothing different when you are driving in inclement conditions when it comes to steering and aiming your truck. But again, be aware of your surroundings, and be prepared to react if the worst is happening. Maintain your position in your lane and avoid sudden movements. These movements are crucial in ideal conditions, and in less than ideal conditions, they can be catastrophic. Which brings us to point 3, keep your eyes moving. Besides preventing eye fatigue or eye strain, it's also a good idea to keep your eyes moving just so that you're aware of your surroundings. In inclement winter weather, there are 10 times as many hazardous conditions, and you need to be aware of them, and you need to be ready. Now, normally your peripheral vision is 180 degrees, and swiveling your head should give you a 240 degree field of vision. You have your rear view mirrors, and that should be able to extend that field of view to nearly 300 degrees. But remember, blind spots. Keep your mirrors and windows clean and clear, and make sure that your defroster is working properly. Point 4, leave yourself an out, and this means space. In inclement weather, increase your following distance, and if somebody is following you too closely, slow down. I mean, there's a lot of four-wheelers that are relying on you to show them the way, quote unquote, and they'll keep tight on your rear. Now, to them, that makes perfect sense, even though it is absolutely the wrong thing to do. Because if you have to stop quickly, you will not be able to stop in the same distance as you would on dry ground, and it's the same for cars. And likely, they will not react in time, and this will result in a crash. So slowing down means that any impact in a crash will lessen, and this could prevent injury and even death. So take it easy, leave plenty of room, and reduce your speed. Point 5, the final point, is make sure that they see you. Make sure all your lights are working, which you should have done in your pre-trip inspection anyway. Every time you stop for fuel, brakes, whatever, check your lights. Take a rag or a paper towel and wipe off your lights. Make sure your horns are working. Air horns can fill up with ice and snow if you don't have a little cover on them. So giving them an occasional toot will blow out any accumulation of snow or ice that's building up. But use your city horn for signaling as much as possible. Because if you use your air horn, it could startle a motorist. So a quick toot is always better than a long blast. Point 5, the final point, is make sure that they see you. Make sure all your lights are working, which you should have done in your pre-trip inspection anyway. Every time you stop for fuel, brakes, whatever, check your lights. Take a rag or a paper towel and wipe off your lights. Make sure your horns are working. Air horns can fill up with ice and snow if you don't have a little cover on them. So giving them an occasional toot will blow out any accumulation of snow or ice that's building up. But use your city horn for signaling as much as possible. Because if you use your air horn, it could startle a motorist. So a quick toot is always better than a long blast. In inclement weather, a thorough pre-trip inspection is of greater importance. Besides ensuring that your fluids are topped off and your tires are properly inflated, make sure your belts are not worn, make sure all hoses and wires are sound, and that your horn's working and your lights are all in proper order. The heater and the defroster are absolutely required to be working properly, and make sure you have enough fuel and DEF. Another thing you should have is extra blankets and winter clothing. If for any reason you're stranded, you need to keep warm. If you have to get out into the elements for any length of time, your clothing will become soaked. So you need a dry change of clothes. Dry winter socks and an extra pair of boots are a good idea too. And keep a good supply of food and water in your trucks, because if you get stuck, especially if you're stuck out on the road, you will not be able to have access to food, and rescue teams may not be able to get to you for even days. It has happened, and it will happen. So keep non-perishable food on your trucks at all times. Even if you have a cooler and a microwave, you might not be able to use them. Canned meats, canned fish, they're all good ideas. Canned chili, beef stew, beefaroni, canned ravioli, stuff like that. That'll keep, and you don't necessarily have to heat it up to eat it. You can eat it cold. I used to eat a lot of cold chili and beef stew, and even soup can be eaten cold. Crackers, cookies, candy, stuff like that. Beef jerky, Slim Jims, Lanyagers, things like that. Stuff that won't perish, stuff that'll keep and doesn't require refrigeration. It's good protein. Also, make sure you have a few gallons of water in your truck. Keep it inside the cab area, because if you put it in your side box, it could freeze up. So you need plenty of water to remain hydrated. And even in cold weather, you can become dehydrated, so make sure you have plenty of water. Extra oil and coolant are also a good idea, because if you keep your engine running while you're stuck, you need to be up on these items, because you might have to top off your fluids. But don't idle constantly if you're stuck, because it burns fuel, and if you're stuck for a while, you're going to need to conserve fuel. It's also why you need to be sure that when you can, keep your fuel tank and your DEF tank as close to full as you can, because this could be a lifesaver. The decision to run in bad weather is yours, and yours alone. The decision to shut down is also yours and yours alone. Well, maybe shutting down might not be your decision alone. You might have some help with it. But if you're secure at a truck stop somewhere and conditions dictate that you stay put, well, you should be okay. You know, other drivers will also decide to wait out the weather, and truck stops tend to fill up early in storms. Make the call as soon as conditions begin to deteriorate and park it somewhere, because, you know, under good weather, there isn't enough parking for the trucks out there, and if more trucks are trying to shut down because of the weather, truck stops can turn into a regular circus. And as the storm worsens, more and more trucks will be looking for a place to park. And these truck stop parking lots will fill up in a hurry. And people are going to park all over the place because you can't see the lines. If they had previous storms, they might have big piles of snow filling up some parking spots. So it really becomes a circus. It's just a good idea that if you're somewhere and they're expecting a bad storm and conditions are starting to deteriorate, stay put. All I can say is stuff like this happens, and it's part of the job, so you need to find a safe and secure place to shut down and try to stay out of the way of the other trucks. Now, during a storm, you'll see drivers heading inside of the truck stop. You'll find a degree of camaraderie which will be very encouraging to you because, hey, we're all in this together. So we're all taking a bite of the same shit sandwich. Let's stay civil with each other, huh? Grab a cup of coffee, a bite to eat, sit with the other drivers in the TV lounge. If you're in the restaurant, invite another driver to sit at your table and eat with them. Back in your truck, call home, read a book, listen to your radio or your TV, and catch up on all that sleep that you lost because your dispatcher was on your back to make that last delivery. Another thing you need to do is to be aware of your load. Make sure it's secure because shifting loads can be a hazard. I mean, it can be a hazard in ideal conditions. Imagine what it's like in poor weather conditions. And if you're a tanker yanker like I used to be and you can't prevent your load from moving, remember centrifugal force, centripetal force, inertia, that can be even more amplified in bad conditions. So be aware of what your load can do to you. And if you're empty, remember that you don't have the weight to hold the load down. Less weight means less gravity, which means less traction, so take it easier when you're deadheading. Another thing to consider is local and state laws regarding winter driving. Many states, particularly western states, have mandatory chain laws, and in bad weather, chaining up is not an option. So, first of all, make sure that you have the necessary chains. If your company doesn't necessarily supply you with them at a terminal, you can check chains out of a chain bank. Your company may have an arrangement with a chain bank. So check out the chains that you need. I mean, sometimes it's when entering a state, sometimes it's just entering a particular highway, but if you're required to carry chains, make sure you have them. And if you're required to stop and chain up, do it. Because if you ignore this law, likely you will not only get a hefty fine, you'll also get a hefty tow bill. And these people want to be paid on the spot. No dough, no tow. And most states have laws requiring you to remove snow from the roof of your trailer. This has been a controversial subject over the years, but it's pretty much a given thing now. Your company should have arrangements made with a service which performs this task, but say you have a customer and you pick up a trailer that's been sitting out in the snow and the roof is covered with snow. A lot of these customers will have a snow blade. That's basically a big, looks like a giant snow plow up in the air, and you drive underneath it and you crank down this sort of plow looking thing until it touches your roof and you just drive through it. Many places the yard jockey will do that before you hook up to the trailer, but if you're required to do it yourself, be sure that you do it. And if you don't know what you're doing, ask for help. Usually the yard jockey will help you out with that. There are big fines for trucks with snow blowing off, and especially if it's been sitting a while and it's melted and refrozen, you have these big chunks of ice. When they break up on your roof, they can fall off and people have been killed. So, clean your roof off. Well, I'm sure that I haven't covered everything here, but remember that I am a senior citizen and I have senior moments. And there are things that will happen out there in inclement weather which fall under the category of bizarre. So, at this point, the only thing I can say is, as you go into winter, and especially if you're a rookie and this is your first winter, be prepared, be ready, and be safe. For transitions, this is Sully, the retired tanker yanker. Safe and happy travels. The decision to run in bad weather is yours and yours alone. The decision... Blah.